Welcome everyone, my name is Kate Murray, and as a professor of business ethics at St. Edward University, I'd like to welcome you to this panel at this business conference. We're here to provide some evidence for the different perspectives on the question, do American companies have an obligation to ensure that their foreign partners are meeting international labor standards? And as all of you here in the audience are American business representatives at this international conference, I'm sure you've run into this question before. So to provide us some evidence, although we won't be able to cover every bit of this debate, we have three expert panelists here today. The first is Francesca Shire. She's Director of Public Relations at the Fair Labor Association, and she'll be giving us some aspects to this debate about public relations and the ethical side of things. Rolf Luft is our second panelist, lobbyist for the Patton Boggs firm, which represents Apple and other companies, and he'll be giving us a little bit of a legal perspective. Our third panelist is Ulysses Vidal, spokesperson for the Economic Policy Institute, and he'll balance both perspectives of the pro and con by providing evidence on both sides. For the ground rules of this presentation, there will be a total of 3 questions. Each question will be posed to all 3 panelists, and they'll have between a minute and 1 minute 30 seconds to answer each one. At the end, I'll open the floor for 3 to 4 minutes of Q&A at the end, and I'll direct each of your questions to one of the panelists. Those answers are not to exceed 45 seconds. So thank you all for being here. I know you've had a busy schedule at this conference, and I'll start with the first question. The first question is, do you believe that U.S. companies should have a social responsibility to ensure good labor standards on the part of their foreign partners? And our first panelist to answer will be Fran.
Hello everyone, as Kate said, my name is Francesca Shire. And I think that companies should have the social responsibility in order to promote good labor standards. By doing that, we create benefits both to the employees and the companies themselves. It creates a balance between the economy, the society, and the ecosystem. The business also should have the moral obligation to help improve the conditions of a system that they have benefited from that. Furthermore, American employees, they think that it's good to have the companies to have a social responsibility. According to Forbes, the majority of the employees do not want to work to companies that they did things dissimilar to their values, and 65% of the employees would consider stop working to companies if they knew that the company was harming the environment. A study made by the Society for Human Resource Management reveals that socially responsible practices are important too. Employee morale, 50%, loyalty, 41%, retention, 29%, recruitment of top employees, 25%, and productivity, 21%. And all these ideas contribute to my position.
Thank you, Fran. And now we'll know from Rolf.
All right, everybody. My name is Rolf Luft, and I think it's just unfair for any one company to be held accountable for the actions of another, regardless of the location of their headquarters. The fact is that multinational corporations and the practice of offshoring, especially offshoring of manufacturing jobs, which happen to be, most often associated with labor violations, have jump-started the development of many nations and lifted up millions from poverty. Additionally, they've contributed towards advancing women's rights. So it is the responsibility of a foreign partner to operate within limits of their local law and within the agreements of their partners. And it's the responsibility of countries to have and enforce labor laws that are in accordance with international standards. Violations should be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, but U.S. companies are just not directly responsible.
Thank you, Rolf. And our third panelist will be Ulysses.
Well, as Kate said, my name is Ulysses Vidal, and I am the spokesperson for the Economic Policy Institute. I'm split on this issue because I do believe that there is a reason to act when companies violate labor standards. But I'm not fully convinced that these standards are designed to help poor in other countries. Because, for example, Shell's branch in Nigeria produces 9 billion barrels of oil for 1.1 billion profits. But according to the CIA, more than 70% of the Nigerian population lives below the poverty line, for example. And this is just one of a number of cases where the economic benefit is not reaching the local people as the company might claim.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to our second question, which is, given your differing perspectives, what is your opinion of the recent controversies surrounding Apple's Chinese manufacturing partner, Foxconn? And we'll hear from Fran first.
Well, I believe the conditions at Foxconn are absurd. For those in the audience that don't know about it, more than 10 workers have committed suicide due to work conditions, according to Bloomberg Business Week. They had to install nettings around outdoor stairwell of dormitory buildings to prevent people from jumping to their death. One of the workers told to the Bloomberg Business Week that he had thought about committing suicide because after he started working for Foxconn, his life seems meaningless. He also told that conversations are prohibited. They only have bathrooms break every 2 hours, and all the employees get yelled all the time. So then I question myself, is that a good work condition? I don't think so, and that's why I think Apple should take the responsibility of these employees, because they are working in order to produce Apple's products and to increase Apple's profits. And I also think that Apple should take the responsibility of their treatment, because otherwise they're going to promote a poor image to Apple. According to Harvard's Business Review, strategy is all about creating a unique position, and that's what I think that Apple should do. Take a unique position by valuing workers' rights and being socially responsible.
Thank you, Fran. And now on to Rolf.
Okay, I think that it's important when we're trying to assess the blame in this type of situation to realize that Foxconn is already bigger than several of their customers, like Nokia and Microsoft. And that's according to The Economist. And they're attempting to double in size again in the next 5 years. They have 28 campuses, and they're expanding to Brazil, Mexico, and even the United States for manufacturing. They have currently over 1.4 million employees, and it's true that Apple indirectly employs about half of those, but they offered them an opportunity, and they willingly accepted that opportunity. No one's held there against their will. Steve Jobs also pointed out at an All Things Digital conference a couple years ago that the on-site amenities for Foxconn employees, such as swimming pools and tennis courts and hospitals and movie theaters, do not even exist in U.S. companies. And the suicides that have garnered the media attention, sort of misleading too. The suicide rate for Foxconn employees is less than that of the average U.S. city. And I read that in an article on the Daily Beast. Most importantly, problems that the FLA found at the Foxconn plants were in violation of Chinese law and also in violation of Apple's supplier code of conduct. And since they were in violation of both of those agreements, it's solely Foxconn's responsibility.
Thank you, Rolf. And now on to Ulysses.
Well, as Franz said, working conditions at Foxconn are absurd. According to Business Week magazine, there was done an audit on the part of France's organization of 35,500 workers at Foxconn facilities that revealed more than 50 legal or code violations. What is more, it is said that workers at Foxconn work more than 174 hours a month and 80 to 100 hours of overtime. I mean, that's for sure. I mean, there is something must be done, but I think that also it must be recognized the economic benefits, because Foxconn is the world's biggest manufacturer of electronics in the world, with the producing of 50% of the electronics in the world and employing 1.4 million people. So we must recognize the economic benefits, I mean, we must work with those companies to make sure that changes are made.
Thank you. And now we're on to our final question. What initiatives do you think should be adopted that would lead to concrete progress regarding international labor standards? And if you could be sure to sum up your stance at the end of this answer. And we'll first hear from Fran.
Well, I believe in order to have a progression on international labor standards, we have to reinforce the laws. I believe that our legislation is not strong enough, and that's why new laws should be created to protect the workers, the environment, and the society in general. We also want more oversight as to whether international operations are following current rules, because businesses are cheating on the law all the time, and it should stop. As I have stated before, there are a lot of benefits to that companies that take social responsibility seriously. And according to Forbes, 88% of the consumers want to see the business achieving their goals, but at the same time improving the society. I take this stance too. And I also think that there should be a shift on the way that the companies work. It's a process of learning, and the companies should understand that in order to increase their profit and their market share, they should reduce the damage on the environment and the society in general. So overall, I think that they should improve the legislation, and also they should improve the monitoring abilities in order to solve this problem.
Thank you, Fran. And now we'll hear from Rolf.
I think that any initiative that might increase oversight and regulation is going to cost money. And so if we're going to ask U.S. companies to pay that cost probably will be handed down to the consumer eventually. And this will serve as a tax on the American consumer, and that's unnecessary. It's not the responsibility, again, for U.S. companies to continuously monitor the actions of their foreign partners, because that responsibility lies in the hands of local and national government in that country. The focus should be on pressuring countries like China to enforce existing laws more efficiently, and if they cannot do that, to reform the laws in general. American business should only be asked to pay if a measure is cost-reducing or revenue-generating. Companies have many stakeholders, and in addition to their employees at home and the American consumer, of course, overseas subsidiaries and partners are included as stakeholders. But the fact of the matter is that U.S. companies should not bear the brunt of any sort of changes there.
Thank you. And now to our last panelist, Ulysses.
Well, as I started to say in my last answer, we must work with companies directly to address this issue of labor. I mean, we cannot simply expect them to follow the laws without any consideration of their needs. According to the International Living, there are many different needs and ventures to pursue based on different countries, culture, and regions. And we must consider also that the context, because it's different in every place, right? And I think that one specific initiative that could be adopted is creating a strong code of ethics within the company. However, according to the Houston Chronicles, rewarding employees for following that code will make it even more effective. I mean, this kind of approach considers the arguments on both sides of the issue and reveals yet another reason I consider myself neutral in this debate.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank our panelists again for being here and for the audience as well. But to recap what we've heard today, we've heard from Fran, who's the Director of PR at Fair Labor Association, and she believes that companies should take a responsibility to enforce those labor standards. And she argued that that's supported by both consumer views and employee views. Beyond that, Rolf shared with us some legal perspectives on that, believing that the responsibility lies with national and local governments, and that we should pressure those governments to enforce the existing laws, but anything beyond that, the employees are voluntary, and that the company doesn't have the necessary obligation to fulfill these standards. Ulysses, on the other hand, is split on the issue and believes that responsibility should be taken, but thinks that it should consider the context of the country as well as the needs of the business. So I'd like to once again thank our panelists for sharing their expertise with us, and thank the audience for taking the time with us to be here today, and open the floor for some Q&A. Any questions? Yes.
What role do you believe gender equality has in this debate?
Okay, the question is, what role do you believe gender equality has in this debate? And I'm going to direct that question to Fran.
Well, gender equality has always been an issue on labor standards. So I am very against any kind of discrimination, but because I believe that a person should succeed or fail according to their merit. And the business should focus more on what and who is most qualified to the job, ignoring the fact of their race or ethnicity or age. And the business should also give equal opportunity and salaries to men and women. International Labor Organization has a lot of resources about this issue, so I would encourage you to look them up and to have a further information.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you believe that voluntary corporate codes of conduct are a good model for addressing issues of international labor standards?
Okay, this question is, do you believe that voluntary corporate codes of conduct are a good model for addressing issues of international labor standards? And I direct that question to Rolf.
I think that codes of conduct are a great starting point for the relationship between international companies in addressing these issues. And I think that they should be mandatory for any company that's pursuing anything international, especially offshoring to do with labor. But most companies already have clauses in their contracts that would prohibit, their foreign partners from engaging in any sort of illegal activity, and there would be repercussions for that. But the codes of conduct can be an easier way to distribute that information throughout the companies. Since a mutual respect is needed when doing business, especially internationally, I think that codes of conduct can be a great starting point.
Thank you. And any other questions? Yes.
Do you think that international conventions or treaties can play any role in this issue?
I direct that question to Ulysses, and the question was, do you think international conventions or treaties can play any role in this issue?
Well, yeah, for sure. I think that treaties and conventions are really useful, but I think that only if there are explicit penalties for violating them. I think that an enforcement mechanism should be available.
Alrighty, well that concludes our panel. Thank you so much.